What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Astra. Alright guys, today we're in the boot. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be installing an amplifier into the Astra. I don't have a sub as yet. I'm working on my wife at the moment, trying to convince her that it's a good idea to make a little bit of noise. But in the meantime, what I am going to do is I'm going to hook up my amplifier using this wiring kit that I got from Autobahn. And that's going to run my 4 speakers that I have in the car currently. And when I do get a sub, then it's just a simple case of plugging a wire into the amp, plugging a wire into the sub, and throwing it in the boot, and we have bass. When you go and you start looking for an amp, there are hundreds of different amps out there. Now, I've chosen to stick with Kicker. I do have Kicker speakers currently mounted in the car, and those are speakers that we installed when we first bought the car because the speakers that came with it were just completely short. I like Kicker, they're a good, well-known brand, and so I think we'll just stick with them. The fact that we've got 4 speakers in the car already, plus I want to be adding a sub eventually, we needed an amp that could run all 4 speakers plus the sub. So what I've had to do is I've gone in, done my research, and I found myself the KX A800.5. Essentially, it's a 5-channel amp. That means it's going to run 5 speakers, 4 small speakers in the car, 1 sub. I've got my power kit here. These are not too cheap. They look pretty good. We haven't opened it up. It does have your nifty little diagram on the back there. You can't get lost. But we'll try our best. If we look at the amp itself, now this was a demo amp. So it was sold to me for like 60% off, which is really good considering that these things are about $800 and I picked that up for $350. Right, well that's all we're going to be installing. So let's go ahead now and have a look at how we're going to start it. The first thing we need to work on is the wiring. Let's get involved. So it is to my understanding that we're going to need a power cable, an earth cable, running from the battery through some sort of grommet in the firewall into the car, down the side of the car and into the boot where the amp will be sitting. So this does come with a very nice looking fuse. Looks like we have 2 RCA cables there, which will work good for what I'm currently trying to do is just hook up the small speakers. We're going to have to buy a 3rd one of these once we do want to hook up the sub. Got a little bit of extra wiring here. This just looks like it is to actually hook up from your speakers to the amp. This is our ground cable. And this is our power cable. Looks like a pretty big hefty cable, good and strong. We are definitely going to have trouble trying to find a grommet to get that through the firewall into the cab from the engine. We'll do our best. Let's go have a look what we can find. Moving over to the front of the car where we're going to draw our power for our amp. So we have a battery here, and that's where we need to draw our power. And now somehow get a cable through our firewall into the back of the car. If we come look down the other side, there is a little nipple with a cable coming out to open my bonnet. So that goes through and is connected to the bonnet lever. So what I'm going to do is go on the inside and have a look if we can access that. Here is the lever for my bonnet release.
So here's the entry point here. You see our little grommet. The issue I'm going to face here is that is quite a tight little space. I'm going to need to push that rather large power cable through, and it's already got a fairly sturdy cable in there. So we'll get a bit of lube on and see how we go.
Alright, so what I've got here is a very small file, and I've just lubed that up with WD-40.
as best I can. We're going to see if we can get that through there and make some space for this cable to fit through. See how we go. And she's in.
Alright, so we've got our cable here. What we're going to do now is we're going to try get into that tight little space and push this cable through. As you can see, it's a lot thicker than the hole I've made, so lots of WD-40, lots of wiggling, lots of force. We're going to get this thing in there.
One eternity later.
Alright, that took a lot longer than I anticipated, but we got her in there. Now the way I went about this, just to show everyone, I got myself still very tight to pull through. Got myself a wire zip tie that I knew could fit through the grommet. From there, I put a little slit into the wiring so I could pull the zip tie through. A bit of tie wire, tied it off nice and tight so she wouldn't come out. Once I got the zip tie through, grabbed onto it with my pliers and gave it a good old college try. She popped through and we are through the firewall. We need to decide where and how we're going to mount this fuse. Now, if you look on these Astras, it has two fuse boxes here. Now this one's full of little fuses. This one, however, has lots of space. Progress is progress, right? So I've used a 22 hole punch and I've drilled a hole in the side there. I've then got little pilot holes set for the mounting. Once I screw that in, that's going to sit nice and flush. Pull that cable through, connect her into the fuse, out the other side, run it down, neaten her up, attach to the battery. We have power. So, the way that this is going to work for you non-technical minds out there, this is the piece we pushed through the grommet. I've just taken it, cut off that zip tie that we had on there, exposing some wires. And there we have it. One side of our power cable connected to our fuse. Alright, let's go see how much length we need on the other side, cut it off, and attach the other side. So we've measured up how much wire we need, and we've cut it off from the other end. It's connected to the battery. Now we're going to connect that to the other side of the fuse, and mount our fuse. Alright, now let's get this into that box. So this is where we're at. We've got the fuse mounted nice and neatly in that little box. Now we just need to find a spot to relocate all of these. Cool. Got a live wire here, not connected to a battery. We'll connect that up once we've finished doing all the wiring. That's just going to run in along there into our fuse, and the cover's going to go over that. And we're just going to neaten up the rest. Now stepping into the inside of the vehicle, it's going to be a lot easier if you strip out the vehicle for your running of your cables. It'll allow you to find places that you can put the cable through the back. What I've found is an entry point behind my seat. And so far what I've done is I've run the cable out along the trim on the side of the car. I've come down under the carpet and out the center there and down into the back. I've then placed in my RCA cables, which are going to run down the other side of the vehicle. The reason I have run the electrical cable down the left and the RCA cables on the other side is because I want as much separation from the electrical current as I can get, so I don't want any distortion. I want a nice clear sound through the amp.
Let's have a look at the wiring that we've pulled through here. So we have our speaker cables. These are attached directly to our speakers. We've got one running down to the back speaker here. The other one runs down along to this back speaker here. From there, we've got another two cables that are running through down along the skirting of the car, all the way up behind the glove box, and those come out here. Those are going to be attached to our front speakers. Coming back here, we have our three RCA cables One in the middle is a little bit darker, that one just there, and that one is for our sub. These are also running under the seat, they're going to go under the skirting, same place as the front speaker cables, and when it comes time to it, we'll pull those through and attach them to the head unit. The last cable that we need to worry about is this little blue one. That's also coming through the same place. That's going to run down along behind the back seat as well, down through the skirting, up behind the glove box, and that we've put a little clip on and attached it to our loom that is behind our head unit, and that is the remote switch that will tell the amplifier when there's power to the head unit. Let's go ahead and grab some zip ties, clean up all these wires. That's better. Alright guys, we're finally back in the rear of the car. We've laid our cable, we've pulled it through to the boot. Let's have a look at what we've got. Just a bit of context on what these wires actually do. So the RCA cables here actually bring the sound from the head unit, and they bring it all the way back into the amplifier. From here, the amplifier does its thing, and then the sound comes out of the amplifier down through these wires, which go directly to our speakers. We have here our power cable, that's the one that we pulled through the firewall. This is our earth cable that we've yet to find a place to mount, and we will do shortly. This is our remote cable. What this does is tells the amplifier to turn on when the head unit turns on. Coming out to the front where the head unit is, this is my head unit, it's a JVC, and this has a 3-channel. And what that means is that these have 3 separate channels, right, left and sub, and those will plug straight into my RCA cables, which I've run to the boot. The rest of the wiring in here is mainly to hook up my head unit to be able to work with my steering wheel, except for this little switch here. This is the blue wire that comes from the amplifier that I've hooked up to my remote wire on my head unit. And what that does is when the radio turns on, the amplifier will automatically turn on. You don't have to go and flick any switches. And then, as I was talking about, my front speakers were very hard to get to. As you can see, this here, that is actually a plug, not a grommet to run wires through. I can't locate the actual wires for the speakers. So instead, I've run them up through, and I've attached them to the original speakers, just with a bit of clips and some heat shrink to make it nice and neat. And that'll just give power to my front speakers directly from my amp. Whereas the rear speakers, on the other hand, I'm able to run direct cable. There's the old cable, I've just taped it up. Might need it in the future, you never know. But that runs direct through and onto the amp. Same with the other side. We've now plugged in our RCA cables there. We've plugged in our head unit there. Everything works perfectly fine. We now have our amp earthed. Let's go plug in the front, see if the car blows up. Well, the car didn't blow up. Now we have our amp connected with all 4 of our speakers running off the amp itself. They are pumping. So now it's time to go and buy ourselves a sub and hook her up. Well, I bit the bullet and went and got myself a sub. I decided that I'm going to stick with kicker because that's what everything else is, and I got a 10-inch down-firing sub. So let's cut some wire and hook her all up. The next step in our install is going to be mounting the sub in a practical spot. Being a down-firing sub, it does take up quite a bit of floor space in the boot. What I've come up with is I'm going to stand the sub on its side, facing towards the back seat, which is the back wall there. I'm then going to sacrifice one of my ratchet straps, ratchet that onto the back wall there,
using the holes that you can see there, and there's another one behind the cup that side. Then I'm going to bolt the amp onto the box of the sub itself, put the plastic back on the side wall here, drill a hole through the plastic to fit my wires through, and zip tie them up all nice and neat. Now we've got our hole, let's start passing these cables through it. Nice and neat. Alright, let's get this amp attached to the back of the sub and get this sub mounted in the back. Right, I've tried to approach this from a few different angles in how I'm going to mount this. Now this is the best one that I've come up with, where the strap sits just behind, the bolt doesn't go through the strap. That way I can dislodge the sub if I need to. This side will be where the buckle for the ratchet sits, so I have to have the amp slightly over this way, which is fine because that's where our cables go on the right. So this is the best we've come up with, and that's what we're going with. Let's attach it. Right, now that we have our amp attached to our sub, let's go and chuck all these wires back on. Where we're up to so far. We've finished attaching our wires, we've stood our sub up and pushed it to the back. We have our ratchet strap going behind our amp, and we've got all our wires and I've started to neaten them up. About to hook up the power to it and neaten up those wires, tighten up our ratchet strap, and we should be good to go. Well, there it is folks. That's our sub and amp wired in. Only thing left to do now is cut the extra length off of our ratchet strap and play some mad tunes. If there's any critics out there who don't like the way I do any of my wiring or work on cars, just remember I'm not a mechanic, I'm not a professional. This is my first time doing this, and you're just along for the ride. But if it helps someone along the way, then that's a bonus. That's going to be it for the video, guys. Thanks for watching. As always, if you did get any value out of this, leave a like and a comment. If you didn't get any value out of this and you just purely enjoyed watching, good on ya.